Okay, so have you ever had that experience where you're listening to someone speak English and, it's English, but it just sounds like blah, blah, blah
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
almost a completely different language?
Totally, and I think it happens to everybody learning English.
Right. Or, even when I'm watching like a movie or something in English and I realize, oh, shoot, I completely missed the last two sentences
Yeah, it's so easy to get lost.
because it just went so fast I couldn't process it in time.
Definitely, and it can be really discouraging.
Yeah, for sure. Well, today we are talking about how to understand spoken English better.
Yes, we've got some really actionable tips for you.
We do. So if you're ready to improve your English listening skills, get ready because we're going to jump right in.
Welcome to Making English Easy. We're so glad you're here with us today.
Yes, we're so excited to help you on your English learning journey.
We want to make English accessible and enjoyable no matter what level you're at.
Exactly. We're going to break things down step by step and make it easy for you to improve your English.
So before we jump into the tips, let's talk about why listening in English can be so hard.
Okay?
Yeah.
Why is it so difficult?
Well, for starters, native English speakers talk really fast.
They do. It's like they're trying to fit as many words as possible into one breath.
Right, and they often reduce or blend words together.
Oh, yeah. Like, what are some examples of that?
Like the question, what do you want to do, often sounds more like, what a ya want to do, when a native speaker says it.
I've definitely heard that.
And that could be confusing if you're not used to it.
Yeah, for sure, because it sounds so different from the way it's written.
Another reason listening can be hard is because of contractions and informal speech.
Mm-hmm.
Like going to becomes gonna, want to becomes wanna, and did you becomes didya.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are definitely tricky.
And these small changes can make it really hard to understand what someone is saying.
For sure, especially if you're just starting to learn English.
And then, of course, you have the added challenge of different accents and slang. Oh, yeah. English is spoken all over the world. Exactly. And each region has its own unique way of speaking.
So, like, American English is different from British English, is different from Australian English.
Right. And even within those categories, there are tons of regional variations.
And sometimes the same word can have completely different meanings depending on where you are.
Yeah, a great example of that is the word chips.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
In the UK, chips are what Americans call French fries.
Yeah.
But in the US, chips are what British people call crisps.
So if you order chips in a restaurant in London, you're going to get something very different from what you would get in New York.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you really have to pay attention to the context.
Okay, so now that we know why listening in English can be so hard, let's talk about some fun and effective ways to improve your listening skills.
Sounds good.
Let's dive in.
Let's do it. All right. So our first method is the slow and repeat method.
This one is super simple, but it's really powerful.
Yeah, I can see how that would be helpful.
The idea is to slow down the audio and listen to it multiple times.
Okay, so how do you do that? Well, first, you need to find some English audio or video content that you want to practice with.
Like what?
It could be anything, really. A TED Talk, a news report, a podcast, an audiobook, whatever you're interested in.
Okay.
And then you need to find a way to slow down the playback speed.
Right.
Most media players have a setting for this. Or you can use a website like YouTube, which has a built-in speed control.
Yeah, that's easy.
So once you've slowed down the audio, listen to it all the way through once without subtitles.
Okay, just to get a general idea of what it's about.
Exactly. Then listen to it again, but this time with subtitles.
That makes sense, so you can see the words as you hear them.
And finally, listen to it a third time without subtitles and see how much you can understand.
Okay, so it's basically repetition and slowing it down to help you catch more of the details.
Yes. And it's amazing how much your comprehension can improve with just a few repetitions.
I bet. Okay, that's the slow and repeat method. What's next?
Next, we have listen, like a detective.
Ooh, that sounds intriguing.
This method is all about using your brain's natural ability to fill in the gaps.
Interesting.
So instead of trying to understand every single word, focus on the key words and the context.
Okay, I can see how that would be helpful.
Like if you hear someone say, I went to the store yesterday and bought some milk.
Okay.
Even if you don't understand every word, you can probably figure out that the person went to the store and bought milk.
Right, because those are the key words.
Exactly. And the context helps you to understand the meaning.
So it's like solving a puzzle. You have to use the clues to figure out the bigger picture.
Precisely. And as you get better at this, you'll be able to understand more and more, even if you miss a few words here and there.
I like that a lot. So what are some tips for listening like a detective?
Well, first, pay attention to the speaker's tone of voice and body language.
That's a good point.
These nonverbal cues can give you a lot of information about what the speaker is trying to say.
Yeah, like if someone is speaking in a really excited tone of voice, you can probably guess that they're talking about something good.
Exactly. And if they're frowning or crossing their arms, they might be upset or disagreeing with something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another tip is to try to predict what the speaker's going to say next.
Oh, interesting. How do you do that?
Well, think about the context of the conversation and the words that the speaker has already used.
Okay.
For example, if someone says, I love to watch movies, especially,
Hmm.
you might predict that they're going to say something like action movies or comedies or romantic
Right,
comedies.
because those are all types of movies.
Exactly. And the more you practice this, the better you'll get at predicting what people are going to say.
Cool. And that can really help with your listening comprehension.
For sure, because if you can anticipate what's coming next, you're more likely to catch it.
Okay. I like this method a lot. What's our next technique?
Our third technique is called shadowing.
Shadowing? What is that?
It's a technique where you listen to a piece of audio and try to repeat it as closely as possible.
Oh, wow. So like you're shadowing the speaker's voice.
Uh-huh. Exactly. You want to try to match their intonation, their rhythm, their pronunciation, everything.
That sounds pretty challenging.
It can be, but it's a really effective way to improve your listening and speaking skills.
Okay, so how do you do it?
Well, first, you need to find a short audio clip that you want to practice with.
Something like what?
Again, it could be anything, but it's best to start with something short and simple.
Like a minute or two?
Yeah, that's a good starting point.
Okay.
And then you just play the audio sentence by sentence and repeat each sentence after you hear it.
Okay, so listen and repeat, listen and repeat.
Exactly. And try to do it as quickly and accurately as possible.
I can see how that would be helpful.
It forces you to really pay attention to the sounds of the language.
Right, and to process them quickly.
Exactly. And it also helps you to improve your pronunciation.
Yeah, because you're basically mimicking a native speaker.
Right. And over time, this can really help you to sound more natural and fluent.
Cool. Okay, what's our next technique?
The music and movies method.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
This method is all about using your favorite music and movies to improve your listening skills.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, music is great for learning pronunciation and rhythm
Okay.
because songs often have repetitive lyrics and catchy melodies.
Right, which makes them easy to remember.
Exactly. And when you sing along to a song, you're practicing your pronunciation and intonation.
Yeah, and it's fun.
Exactly. And movies are great for learning vocabulary and slang because they expose you to a wide range of real-life conversations.
Right, and they often use colloquialisms and idioms that you might not learn in a textbook.
For sure. So by watching movies and TV shows, you can really immerse yourself in the language.
Okay, so what are some tips for using music and movies to improve your listening?
Well, for music, try listening to songs with subtitles first.
Okay, so you can see the lyrics as you hear them.
And then try listening to the same songs without subtitles and see how much you can understand.
Okay, and for movies.
Try watching movies with English subtitles first.
Right, so you can see the words as you hear them.
And then try watching the same movies with subtitles in your native language.
Okay, and eventually you can try watching movies without any subtitles at all.
Right, and if you get stuck, you can always rewind and watch a scene again.
Okay, this method sounds really enjoyable.
It is, and it's a great way to learn English without feeling like you're studying.
Okay, last but not least, we have join real conversations.
This is probably the most effective way to improve your listening skills.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Because there's nothing better than actually using the language in real-life situations.
Right. But how do you do that if you don't live in an English-speaking country?
Well, there are a few ways.
Like what?
One way is to find a language exchange partner. There are lots of websites and apps that connect language learners from all over the world.
Cool, so you could find someone who wants to learn your native language, and you could help each other.
Exactly. Another way to join real conversations is to attend online language meetups or classes. There are tons of these available online, and they're a great way to practice your speaking and listening skills with other learners and native speakers.
And I bet there are even some that are free.
Absolutely. And then, of course, if you have the opportunity to travel to an English-speaking country, that's always the best way to immerse yourself in the language.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Okay, do you have any other tips for joining real conversations?
Well, just remember to relax and don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Oh yeah, that's important.
Everyone makes mistakes when they're learning a new language.
It's part of the process.
Exactly. So don't let it discourage you. Just keep practicing and you'll get better over time.
All right, so those are our 5 tips for improving your English listening skills.
And remember, the key is to be consistent.
Yes, practice makes perfect.
The more you listen to English, the better you'll become at understanding it.
All right, so we've got a challenge for you.
Are you up for it?
Okay, here it is. Choose a short audio or video clip in English, something that's about 5 minutes long,
Listen to it once without subtitles.
and then listen to it again with subtitles.
Make a note of any new words or phrases that you hear,
And then try to use those words and phrases in your own conversations.
or just in your own thoughts.
Exactly. The more you use the language, the better you'll become at understanding it.
Now, we love to hear from you in the comments.
Yes. Tell us what you find most challenging about listening to English,
What are your biggest struggles?
and what tips have helped you the most.
We're all in this together.
Yes, and we can learn from each other.
So keep listening, keep learning, and keep growing.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
And one last thought for you as you continue on your English learning journey.
Think about how the way you listen to English might change depending on the situation.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Like, would you listen to a lecture in the same way that you would listen to a casual conversation with a friend?
Probably not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So be aware of the different listening skills that you need for different situations.
That's great advice.
And keep experimenting and finding what works best for you.
And most importantly, have fun.
Absolutely, learning English should be enjoyable.